Hi everyone, thanks for joining me on GBN Originals. Here comes part 2 of my interview with the most excellent Maajid Nawaz. I feel all the time behind it all, and it's difficult to get people engaged with it because it comes back to subjects that sound intrinsically boring, like economics and arithmetic. Yeah. But it seems to me that we are being nudged and shepherded all the time into a situation that solves the great financial crisis, that enables the much vaunted Great Reset.
Yeah.
Which to me is just evangelical talk for people who've always had the wealth, resetting that to ensure that they have even more of it, retain control of its creation and supply, and all of the rest that implies, and even that the election of a Trump and the things that we're being invited to be distracted by and to pay attention to are all lower in the food chain of importance from whatever on earth is being done to reset the finances. And it's not sexy and it's not salacious and it doesn't capture people's attention and imagination. But to me, it's the fundamental.
It is what we're witnessing now is the inevitable long-term consequence of why World War I and World War II were fought. I mean, it is that significant, and you're correct. This kind of technocracy will end up with a situation where, and they're already trying to introduce the bill through our Houses of Parliament for the end of life or euthanasia, and this kind of scenario under a technocracy will inevitably lead, because everything will be done by data. At some point, AI will say to whoever's running the machine, the architect in the matrix, AI will say, it's more expensive keeping this useless eater who's in their 80s alive in the hospital than it is to kill them right now. And the money that we could save by killing them could go to feed this baby over here. Now for AI, because AI won't have human emotions, that's a no-brainer. Kill the 80-year-old and feed the baby. Of course, morally and spiritually, who has the right to make such decisions, And so the scenario already, the building blocks for that nightmarish scenario are being put in place. They have been, they were accelerated through COVID. And we see with this euthanasia bill as an example of that. But through COVID in particular, we saw the mass dying off of the elderly in hospitals under the guise of COVID. It's already been done, Neil. In New York, it was done under Governor Cuomo. He had to resign under the guise of a sex scandal, when really the issue was they concealed and lied. And it's now a matter of public record that they lied about the deaths in their care homes in New York. And in the UK, the same thing. Matt Hancock, like Cuomo, ostensibly left office over a sex scandal, but just in time for his own care home and hospital deaths scandal not to be revealed. And that scandal, as you're aware, Neil, was the Midazolam scandal. It's very important for people to understand that the technocratic desire to turn us into commercial economic units that can be activated and turned off, killed, whenever the economics suit, the building blocks for that have already been put in place. And it's a matter of record, and I can exclusively break this news for you, Neil, on your show, actually. No one else has heard this before. Something that you mentioned me on my investigative side. It's something I've been involved in for a while, but I'll tell you now as a first announcement that some of the surviving members of the 50 families that went to Parliament, they were the surviving 50 families from those who claimed that their relatives were involuntarily euthanized by the state due to the use of midazolam and an opioid in our end-of-life care protocols. Some of those families have got to a stage where there's now a formal inquest into a specific case of death, which would be a groundbreaking case because it's precedent-setting. Then the death involves the use of an end-of-life protocol, midazolam, and an opioid. I've been granted independent press access to this inquest, Neil. I can confirm that for you. I have the audio recordings of the last 4 pre-inquest review hearings. Today, in a week, that's next Thursday coming, right, is going to be the 5th pre-inquest review hearing known as a PIRH, and then there will be a formal inquest. The senior coroner in the first pre-inquest review hearing has already said he's considering issuing a preventing future deaths or PFD document, which would mean that the coroner, the senior coroner, has granted formal recognition that this is a problem of a systemic nature involving the use of midazolam plus an opioid in the end-of-life protocols. It would be systemic. There are witnesses, 6 nurses and 4 doctors who are already serving as witnesses to give evidence in this inquest. And if the inquest finds unlawful killing in this precedent-setting case, it would confirm the research you're already aware of Dr. Wilson's side, that the spike in excess deaths in 2020, April 2020, as his peer-reviewed paper has already said, I'll quote it for you, wrongly attributed to COVID-19 in April 2020. It was not due to SARS-CoV-2 virus, which was largely absent, but was due to the widespread use of midazolam injections, which was statistically very highly correlated, coefficient over 90%, with excess deaths. There's no correlation with COVID jabs and those excess deaths, just as there's no correlation with COVID cases and those excess deaths. There is a correlation with midazolam injections and those excess deaths. This is a scandal of huge proportions.
It's so difficult. I hear myself sounding like a cracked record about COVID, the debacle, the pandemic that wasn't, and all of the rest of it. It's so difficult to maintain, to continue to attract people's attention to it. There's inquiry going on at the moment. I saw a post online yesterday from Molly Kingsley from Us For Them, where she had witnessed some of it and was saying this is so not asking the right questions. The tone of it, the way in which it's being. Well, she didn't use the word, but there was many of us always suspected that everything around the aftermath of COVID would be about whitewashing and making things go away. And that you're able to break that news and make that and offer up that testimony about potential changes to the law. And yet people continue to be distracted all of the time by matters that matter less. It's so enervating.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is life. We've got to carry on regardless. I do suspect that for the first time, Nigel Farage's Reform Party are now leading the polls. Now, I said before Farage became an MP in Clacton in my home county of Essex, there's something about Essex and Reform. But I said before he became an MP there that he would become the Prime Minister. Now Reform leads in the polls, albeit within a margin of error, within the 1%. That's the 1% difference between Reform and Labour, but the momentum is clearly for Reform going up and Starmer's Labour going down. The Tories are already way into third place, and then of course on their heels are the Lib Dems. But Reform's galvanisation of the electorate, with local elections coming up in less than 3 months, that's the time I think some of these stories will start picking up. What I envision is Reform, because they've already announced they're going to launch what they're billing as Britain's largest ever political rally to launch their local election campaign in Birmingham Arena. But what I envision are the issues they will jump on, which are core Reform voter and even Tory Brexit and Labour Brexit voter issues, will be things such as immigration, not just undocumented migration, but also legal immigration, the kind of thing that really recently damaged the fortunes of Vivek Ramaswamy, who had to pretty much leave public life as a result of publicly defending legal immigration via the H-1B visa system. That destroyed his reputation among MAGA, but for good reason. Immigration, in principle, can serve a country. The issue is when it gets to a point, and this is me speaking from a working class perspective on this, right? And an ethnic minority perspective on this. There's no right-wing red meat that I'm waving in front of people. This is to say, genuinely, and I think workers are feeling this, if you don't manage the flow of cheaply available migration, cheap meaning wages, into your country, you undercut the wages of those who are already here. Not only do you undercut their wages and therefore outprice domestic workers from the market, Migrant workers are less likely to unionize, especially first-generation ones, because they're desperate for the work and just want to get along because they're happy to be here. The country they came from could be a war zone. It has no jobs for them whatsoever. So they not only undercut you in terms of wage allocation, but they also don't unionize, so they undercut you in rights. And then also, thirdly, they tend not to be settled in a family sense with 2.3 children. Because they're usually migrants who arrive first to build their lives before they get married and have kids. And so you end up with a scenario where also they are more mobile than your domestic worker and able to move about for the jobs easier. So you've, on three factors there, you've undercut your domestic workers. And it's because of that issue, not least, we haven't even got to how it impacts the culture in your country. If you move too fast, you start eroding your social contract, which by definition is built on a cultural consensus. If you erode that too quickly, you start seeing the dissipating facets of your society pulling apart, right? So immigration will be a major issue that the Reform Party will campaign on in these upcoming local elections, but so will be the other issues like that have affected the Labour government, such as the underage rape grooming gang scandal. That will be a major issue that they will campaign on because of Keir Starmer seeking to cover it up. So will be the COVID stuff, because of course, don't forget, Reform are seeking to come through the middle between the Tories and the Conservatives. You can get Labour on immigration. You can get Labour on the underage rape grooming gangs, because that happened on their watch, as immigration currently is happening on their watch. What do you get the Tories on? To stop people voting Tory instead of Reform? You get them on their COVID track record. And their COVID track record includes the Midazolam scandal under Matt Hancock. It includes the parties in Downing Street, but it also includes, as we say with the immigration stuff, their track record on Brexit.
You've mentioned the rape gangs, and you've been so outspoken about that it goes back so many years into your LBC days and all of the rest of it, where you were talking about that, and you have held the line. You've held a line on that, a very difficult line.
Yeah,
that you have always maintained on that. When it comes to the shaking of the ant jar, how are you reading the way in which there is so much use being made of the completely justifiable fury in relation to that subject?
Those that seek to shake the ant jar and turn us against each other will exploit every crisis for that purpose. Now, that doesn't mean we bury the crisis. Take Brexit as an example. We know that was what was attempted during Brexit. Farage still won Brexit, and the Southport massacre, it was attempted then. And they attempted to pin on Farage the national riots, when actually it was stage name Robinson and others who were stirring that pot, blaming Muslims, falsely naming people as Syrian asylum seekers, such as Ali Shakati, a fake name, saying they were behind the killing instead of Axel Rudakabana. So people were trying to exploit it even then. The purpose of all of this is to pin the blame on the insurgent politicians. So look what happened with Trump during the Jan 6 scenario. Now, Trump refuses to, like me, but mainly because I've watched it happen to Trump, he refuses to concede the 2020 elections. Till today, he refuses. He says, no, we won that, and that was cheating, right? Till today. So immediately after those elections, he was at a rally. In that rally, Trump says, I know some of you are now going to go to the Capitol. Go there peaceably. He explicitly said the word peacefully in the speech. They banned him from Twitter when that happened, so that his narrative that he told the protesters to go peacefully couldn't be heard, because they literally wiped the sitting president off social media and cancelled him, sought to cancel him, and then pinned the Jan 6 insurrection on Trump. And then it transpires many months later on the Tucker Carlson show, where he plays the CCTV footage that the Capitol Police were lifting the ropes and showing the protesters around on a guided tour inside. There was no riot. It was a false flag. It was a setup. That's why Trump pardoned them all when he became president. Take that example and understand that's what they tried to do in Southport to Nigel Farage after the horrific terrorist attack on those children by Axel Rudakabana, who by all accounts looks like, we're wearing my counter-extremism hat on. Now, I'll tell you, it looks like he sought to agitate a race war akin to the country of his origin, Rwanda, where a race war genocide had already occurred. He sought, it looks like, upon the available evidence, to trigger a race war. And then certain people that wanted to shake that jar jumped on it to fulfill precisely that purpose and then pin the blame on Farage like the Jan 6 situation was pinned on Trump. Luckily, Farage didn't take the bait. Farage distanced himself from stage name Tommy Robinson. And even recently, because of the Musk attempt to resurrect this in the case of the grooming gangs, the underage rape gangs, and again try and champion stage name Tommy Robinson, and waved 400 million over Farage in order to get him to endorse stage name Robinson. Farage again refused to take the bait and backed away and said, "We're not for sale."
I think there's something so much, as if the rape gangs wasn't dark enough, as if that wasn't a dark enough story. But that was going on tacitly. From the 1970s, the officialdom was aware that was happening at some level and in some places. That suddenly, last year, it became the thing to do to point at it and demand action on it. I thought there's something much darker here, because we know that this kind of abuse of youngsters is endemic. It's a rottenness that runs through society, and that it was from the 1970s that activity by that group that you have highlighted already for years and years and years was suddenly the thing to do, to pay attention to that and to condemn it rightly, finally. I thought there's something else going on here.
Yeah. Because
there's something else going on here.
The Pakistani street gangs, which everyone wanted to point at because of Musk's attempt to do so, which was an attempt to shake the jar of ants, by the way, which is why he shoved stage name Robinson's name into the middle of it. It was a shaking of the jar of ants. The Pakistani street gangs are only one element, and that's why we immediately said this was a cover-up. Don't just talk about the street-level gangs. They are organized gangs who have their connections in the police, the social services, the local councils, all the way up through the national political hierarchy of the Labour Party. Now, since we said that, it all came out. We were pointing at the time to Lord Ahmed's conviction for underage sex abuse. He was a Labour peer from Rotherham, which was a trigger case for these grooming gangs. Now, that's from right at the top. We were also pointing to Keir Starmer's decision to appoint Peter Mandelson as his ambassador to the US. Mandelson, the same guy, without a doubt, on record in released court documents, is proven to have visited Epstein's island, to have gone to Epstein's mansion in New York, and to have gone to Paris for his birthday. Close friend of Epstein, more so than even Prince Andrew, right? There's more information on Mandelson's relationship with him than there even was with Prince Andrew. So why was Starmer, look at how Prince Andrew was treated, why was Starmer rewarding Mandelson with the most diplomatic appointment on the planet for Britain, which is to America, right? Granting him diplomatic immunity is what it was about. So that's how far up the rock goes, right to the top with Lord Ahmed and Peter Mandelson. By the way, both Labour and both from the Blair era. Mandelson was Blair's Dark Prince, who had all the dirt on all of the politicians, and that's how he kept them in line. It's why he was called the Dark Prince. Where do you think he got that dirt from, if not Epstein, right? So that's what was going on. Since we said all of that, what got revealed? Well, there was a Labour former defence minister who got arrested in a sting for attempting to solicit sexual favours from an underage boy. And then 2 police officers got arrested in Rotherham for being involved as well. This all came out after the scandal was recently resurrected by Musk, proving that this is bigger, as you just said, Neil, than the mere street gang level. And it's not just Pakistanis. This thing is a rot that goes through the system and is actually what people used to refer to as conspiracy theory. It's the global VIP paedophile ring that used to be run by Epstein, which is an acknowledged Mossad operation. And
that way in which that's so well attested now and is almost a cliche that today's conspiracy theory, is just tomorrow's inevitable truth, and the conversation that we're having now, at this end of the hour, this will be a commonplace. This will be this will be acknowledged. It's only a matter of time that we have to confront the rot, that spins around the human trafficking and the misuse of youngsters, and to imagine that it's in a bubble in one part of society is completely to fall for the cover up.
Yeah.
And that eventually the realization and the acceptance and the coming to terms is going to have to happen that this is an activity that permeates society from top to bottom.
There are 3 appointments in the Trump administration that will touch head on all of the themes we've just discussed on this interview, Neil. Tulsi Gabbard's appointment as Director for National Intelligence touches on the perma-war war hawk machine, because Tulsi has been an opponent of that. She was a Democrat, went independent, then went Trump. Tulsi's confirmation hearing in Congress, she explicitly stated in that confirmation hearing under oath to these senators that the US, the CIA, and the US presidents, consecutive presidents, were directly and materially facilitating Al-Qaeda abroad for war purposes, right? Now she's going to be Director of National Intelligence. So that touches the whole stuff we discussed on foreign policy. There is progress. Then the COVID stuff we just touched with the Midazolam and the story I'm saying next Thursday, there will be another 5th pre-inquest review hearing. It will move the story on to the inquest itself. We'll probably have more news for you on that front. Robert Kennedy Jr.'s appointment there touches on that element. And then finally, Kash Patel, to this last issue you've raised. Kash Patel's appointment as head of FBI by Trump, again, confirmation hearing pending. He has promised, is on the record as saying that he will declassify everything from the assassination of JFK, but all the way through, importantly, to the Epstein list, the clients list. Because to date, Ghislaine Maxwell remains the only woman jailed for providing illegal underage sexual favors to an anonymous list of men that nobody knows, right? So Kash Patel has said, I will declassify all of this. This will move the news agenda forward. I think that we're never going to remove crime, including underage rape. We're not going to eliminate it completely. When we raise consciousness in society, you significantly diminish their ability to operate when more and more people are aware of how they operate and therefore don't fall for the traps, because grooming is a trap. So if we are able to declassify all of this information, get it out to the public, it captures your headlines, then does become a conversation. It becomes a lot easier, referring to your earlier point about keeping the attention. These sorts of moves, in particular by America, makes it easier for us to keep the attention of the public. What we can only ever hope for, Neil, is to raise the level of consciousness. We're never going to be satisfied, because we're never going to have a completely angelic society. That wouldn't really be much fun anyway. So we can only ever try and raise the level of consciousness and make incremental steps towards doing so. And I think that 2025, the Chinese year of the wooden snake, is going to be very, very interesting, because there's going to be a snake's going to shed its skin, and we're going to grow collectively into a new skin. There's going to be a rebirth, and we're going to see a lot of stuff come out.
Incremental steps towards raising human consciousness. I'm going to definitely take that as the point at which to end this conversation. I don't think it's going to get any more hopeful than that. Maajid,
I'm working on a new show called Cancelled, which I'm hoping we're flying out to Ohio at the end of March to start filming, and it's going to be a live audience, long form interview show with people that have experienced any form of cancellation, to provide a serious, no gotcha, serious interview, allow them to have their say, and then have a panel and a live audience react to it.
An even more optimistic note, thank you, Maajid Nawaz. It's been a pleasure, as always, to talk to you. We'll do it again soon.
Absolute pleasure, Neil. Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for watching the completion of my interview with Maajid Nawaz. Please subscribe to GBN Originals.